Greyfriar's Bobby, A Puppy's Tale. One bright Edinburgh morning, a wee Skye Terrier lifted his nose to the air and sniffed. He knew that smell. A meaty waft of sizzling sausages drifted down to the grass market. The pup leaped up, shaking fleas onto his grubby straw bed. He flew up the steps, past the night watchman, Constable John Grey, who was on his walk home from work. "Good morning, wee Bobby," he said. Bobby barked a cheery hello and carried on, up to the top. He squeezed through the railings of George Heriot's school and bolted along the yard, weaving his way through the playground games. "Hello there, wee Bobby," shouted the schoolboys. All day long, Bobby chased rats, and the old cook rewarded him with a fine, fat sausage. When evening came, he trotted wearily back down the steps, past Constable John Grey, who was setting out for work. "Good night, wee Bobby," he said. Bobby snuffled an exhausted good night and plodded back to his grubby straw bed. But one dry day, a new cook came to Heriot's school. A fist-shaking, broom-shoving, cat-loving cook who said, "Get out of my kitchen, you scruffy pup." Bobby trotted gloomily into Greyfriar's kirkyard next door. "Hello," said a boy. "I'm Sandy. Here, you can share these crumbs with the sparrows." Bobby licked the crumbs gratefully from the boy's cold hands, and when Sandy turned to go, Bobby followed. "Don't follow me," said Sandy. "I've no more food and no family to feed me." But Bobby stayed by his side. "Do you still want to be friends?" Sandy whispered. Bobby rubbed his head against Sandy's leg. "I like that." Sandy smiled. The new friends strolled along past coffee houses and taverns, past barefoot barons and busy traders. Sandy stopped at the bakery window. "What fine cakes," he said. "I'd love a ginger bun, wouldn't you? If only I had a penny." But Bobby wasn't looking at the cakes. He was looking across the street at a boy with his hand in a gentleman's pocket. A boy who was stealing a watch. Bobby started barking loud and shrill. Quick as a flash, the pickpocket shot off, with Bobby bounding after him, and Sandy chasing along behind. Helter-skelter up the winding street they ran after the pickpocket, wiggling past skirts and boots, dodging wheels and hoofs, bounding uphill at full pelt. The thief was just a whisker from Bobby's bite, when, strash! They ran straight into the path of Constable John Grey, who was working late that morning. "Bobby," said John in surprise, "what's all this?" "That laddie stole a pocket watch," shouted Sandy, breathless. "This wee dog saw him do it." Bobby barked and tugged at the pickpocket's sleeve, and a glittering gold chain of watch slithered out onto the ground. "Well done, Bobby," said Constable John Grey. "That's my pocket watch," said a gentleman, stepping forward. It was the headmaster from Heriot's school. "It's our favorite rat catcher. You ruffled the puppy's fur. Thank you, wee Bobby. You can visit our school for a sausage any time you like." Bobby wagged his tail. "And you, laddie," he turned to Sandy, "what would you like as a reward?" Sandy stood on his tiptoes and whispered in the man's ear, "To play marbles and hoops with the other boys." The headmaster peered at Sandy with his ragged clothes and his bare feet, and then he smiled. One frosty morning the next week, a meaty waft of sizzling sausages drifted down to the grass market. Bobby flew up the steps, past Constable John Grey, squeezed through the railings of Heriot's school, and bolted across the yard. Weaving his way through the playground games, he heard a familiar voice. "Hello, wee Bobby," shouted Sandy, running over to give his friend a pat. Bobby wagged his tail and leaped. "Sandy, come back and play," the other boys called. "I've got to go now, Bobby," said Sandy, smiling. "But I'll see you soon." When evening came, Bobby plodded wearily back to the steps of his grubby straw bed. His tummy was full, but he was all alone. He longed for a home and a family of his own as he shivered beneath the cold moon. The next day, Bobby pulled himself up, had a shake and a stretch, and trotted up the steps. He didn't squeeze through the railings. He didn't visit the school. He carried on up to the top, where he sat and waited. Wee Bobby had a plan. Trudging towards him came Constable John Grey, who was on his way home from work. "Good morning, Wee Bobby," he said. "Waiting for me, are you? No sausages at the school today." Bobby wagged his tail and woofed. "Ever thought of being a watchdog, Bobby?" asked John Grey. "You'd be braw company on my lonely night shift." Bobby wagged his tail and whirled. "What do you say? Will you join me?" And when John Grey turned to go, Bobby followed. One dark Edinburgh night, from then on, a wee Skye Terrier patrolled. On dark Edinburgh nights, from then on, a wee Skye Terrier patrolled the cobbled streets with his master, the night watchman. Together, they looked out for fires, caught thieves, and kept the sleeping city safe. And when morning came, side by side, they headed for home, a soft, warm bed, and sometimes sausages for breakfast.